Good.
Hi, this is Laura Barnitz. I'm with Montgomery Green. We're out here at Belpre Creek today, and we are going to do a little demonstration of one of our projects called Clean Headwaters. Clean Headwaters is a program that we're offering to Montgomery County high school students and middle school students to explore plastic waste in our local streams. So to start out, I'm going to share with you the different materials that we use for sieving for microplastics. We are actually out here in the stream looking not for the larger plastics, which are obvious, like those plastics caught in the stream bank across there, but we're looking to see if there are microplastics in the water. And a microplastic is plastic nurdles, tiny pieces that have broken down from larger plastics that are less than 5 millimeters in size. And they can be even nanoparticles, which are nanomillimeters in size. We're going to be sieving today using a NOAA protocol to explore what we find in our local creeks. So behind me here I have our Montgomery Parks trash bag, which we would normally use to collect large plastics while we're out here. For the microplastic exploration, I have my gloves on, as you can see. Everyone wears gloves to protect their hands. We have a gallon of distilled water. We have a pail, a steel pail that we will use to measure the volume of water that we're collecting and analyzing. We have a squirt bottle here, again filled with distilled water. We also have a spatula that we will use to scrape the microplastics, scrape whatever debris we find into a viewing screen. And this is our homemade viewing screen. It's a piece of PVC pipe with some netting, some window screen on the bottom that we made. You could, of course, have different kinds of viewing screens here. And then finally, here's our sample jar. This is one we've used before, so this one is not clean, but however, whenever we do come out with classes, this would be perfectly clean before we began. This is from Northwood last fall. We collected sediment in here and we analyzed that later, which I'll explain in a minute. So the first thing that we have to do today is collect the water. So if you'll come with me over here.
And why are we using a metal bucket?
We're using a metal bucket because we don't want any plastic contaminants to come off of our bucket, hopefully not off of us as well. That is something you do need to be aware of. We've set up a camp table here in the stream, and using bungee cords we have attached our sieves. The top sieve, there are two here, which I'll show you in more detail later. The top sieve is a 0.5 millimeter sieve, so anything that does not go through this would not count as a microplastic, okay? The bottom one is even finer, 0.03 millimeters, and that one is we're going to see what we catch that goes through the 0.5 and ends up in that sieve. When you set up, you want to be in at least a foot of water to collect your samples. We are going to sample for 100 liters of water. Within the bucket here, I have marked where the 10-liter mark is. So that has been pre-measured. So I know that I need 10 of these up to this mark to have collected 100 liters of water, okay?
Now, are we concerned about people doing this in standing water or running water? Do you have some...
It should be running water. You don't want to get in water that's so rapid that you would be in danger of falling, ideally. But we are in running water, and primarily we're going to capture microplastics, if there are any, that are near the surface of the water, because this is fairly slow moving. This is easy for us to catch. We're not scraping the sediment on the bottom of the stream. Okay? You could look for microplastics in the sediment as well, but that's not what we're doing right here. Okay, so I'm going to get up to this mark. Almost. All right, I'm up to my 10-liter mark, and I'm going to pour this right through the stream. trying not to splash it everywhere, but to go through. Okay,
So that's 10. Great.
that's 100 liters of water. Now we're going to see what we have in here. Okay, so well, let me bring those other scraper over here. If I had a field microscope today, we would actually do some analysis in the field. But you're just going to have to imagine that we have our field microscope. So if I'm looking at the top of the 5mm screen, I see that we've caught a few little things, probably leaf matter, but most of it is passed through. But if I look at the finer screen, bring it up here, you can see
It's good. I got.
much of what we've captured here.
Oh, great.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to use the spatula for, to scrape carefully into the viewing screen or into my sample jar, ultimately.
Looks like you got some stuff there.
Yep. Looks like. Now I'm spraying from the back of the screen because I don't want to, I'm trying to get it loose so I can, whatever I can get, any material I can collect in that viewing screen. That's my objective here.
So I noticed that everything you're using is pretty much metal or glass
Yes,
to make sure that there's no contamination.
exactly. And we also want to just, in general, practice good scientific method, have all of our materials clean and dry before we begin. Okay. Now, this is not everything that was in that screen, but this is a sample of what we would look at underneath the field microscope to see if we could identify anything that looks like a microplastic. What I can see with my eye right now looks to me like biological, organic matter. Okay, looks like a piece of leaf, looks like things that I might find in nature. But I won't know really until I take my sample, dry it, and actually look at it under a much more powerful microscope to know if we've got any very small microplastics in there.
Great.
All right, so pretend that this is an absolutely clean sample jar.
All right.
Which it is not, but this is just a demonstration. Okay? I'm going to take what I found in my field viewing screen, and I'm going to scrape that into my perfectly clean sample jar as best I can. Of course, you can't see everything, so you might miss a few things. And what I would also do is use a little bit more water. Let's assume I had a lot of gunky stuff in here. I'd use a little more distilled water to rinse this screen off and to make sure that that material entered the sample jar. Okay? Once you have your sample, we've been working with Montgomery College. You might do this in your high school lab as well. We've been taking our samples and labeling them, of course, date, place, name of collectors, and leaving that in a dryer for about 10 days. We use the chemistry lab at Montgomery College, thanks to their generous assistance on this project. And once the sample is dried and it's just crusty stuff inside, basically all the water's gone, then we can use this material for several analyses. We can look at it under a high-powered microscope. We'll look for nurdles, that's tiny little spherical pieces of plastic. We'll look for fragments, might be a piece of film off of a food container or a chip bag. We'll look for fibers, long pieces of obviously not natural materials, blue, purple, red, that could be coming off of our clothing. Okay, so there are numerous things. We can also find tire crumb, we could find pieces of hose. There's a lot of different plastics to look for, and we have some guidance for that when we actually go through our analysis. We also do some tests. We do a density test to determine if we find something that seems to be plastic, what its weight is, and so it will help us identify what kind of plastic it is.
Because plastic floats, right?
Some plastic does, some plastic doesn't. So you have to know what you're looking for. We also do a melt test and an ignition test, or another two possible tests to help us determine the kind of plastic we have. Just to let you know, we have found microplastics in this stream here. This is Belpre Creek, a tributary of the Northwest Branch. We have found them at Burnt Mills. We have found them at Sligo Creek. Microplastics are in our water, and the more we can document this, the more powerful our efforts will be in terms of reducing plastic waste and helping repair and keep our environment clean.